Today we're going to discuss on firewall location and configuration. In the firewall locations and configurations, there will be three types. One is called as a DMJ networks, other one it is called as a virtual private networks, and the third one it is called as a distributed firewalls. This is the figure indicates a firewall is positioned to provide a protective barrier between an external, potentially untrusted source of traffic and an internal network. This is also called as a screened subnet, and it is also known as a demilitarized zone located between an internal and external firewall. A security administrator will decide on the location and on the number of firewalls it will be needed. In this chapter, we'll study some of the common options. This figure shows the most common distinction that between the internal and an external firewall. Just inside the boundary router that connects to the internet or some wide area network. So one or more internal firewalls protect the bulk of the enterprise network. Systems that are externally accessible but need some protections. These are usually located on DMJ networks. Typically, the systems in the DMJ will require or foster external connectivity such as corporate website, email server, or you can call it as a DNS, that is domain name system server. The external firewall provides a measure of access control and also protection for the DMZ systems consistent with their need for external connectivity. The external firewall also provides a basic level of protection for the remainder of the enterprise network. In this type of configuration, internal firewalls serve three purposes. What are the three purposes? We'll discuss one by one. The first one is the internal firewall adds more stringent filtering capability compared to the external firewall in order to protect enterprise servers and workstations from external attack. The second one is the internal firewall provides two-way protection with respect to the DMZ. First, the internal firewall protects the remainder of the network from attacks launched from DMZ systems. Such attacks might originate from forums, rootkits, bots, or other malware lodged in a DMZ system. An internal firewall can protect the DMZ systems from attack from the internal protected network. Third one, it is called as multiple internal firewalls can be used to protect portions of the internal network from each other. For example, firewalls can be configured so that internal servers are protected from internal workstations and also vice versa. A common practice is to place the DMZ on a different network interface on the external firewall from that used to access the internal networks. The second one, it is called as a virtual private networks. In today's distributed computing environment, the virtual private network, that is VPN, this will offers an attractive solution to network managers. This VPN, that is virtual private network, consists of a set of computers. These are interconnected by means of a relatively unsecured network, and that can use of encryption and also special protocols to provide the security. At each corporate site and also workstations, servers and databases are linked by one or more local area networks, that is LANs. The internet or some other public network can be used to interconnect these sites, providing a cost savings over the use of a private network and offloading the wide area network management tasks to the public network provider. The same public network provides an access path for telecom commuters and other mobile employees to log on to corporate systems from the remote sites. But the manager faces a fundamental requirement, that is security. The use of public network exposes the corporate traffic to eavesdropping and also provides an entry point for unauthorized users. To solve this problem, virtual private network is required. And this virtual private network uses encryption and authentication in the lower protocol layers to provide a secured connection through an otherwise insecure network. These virtual private networks are generally cheaper than real private networks because they are using the private lines, but these are rely on having the same encryption and authentication system at both the ends. The encryption may be performed by firewall software or possibly by routers. The most common protocol mechanism used for this purpose is at the internet protocol level, and it is also known as the IP security. An organization maintains a local area networks at dispersed locations. So a logical means of implementing an IP security in a firewall that is shown in figure, which essentially repeats the previous figure. If internet protocol security is implemented in a separate box, that is behind, that also called as internal to this firewall, then the virtual private network traffic passing through the firewall in the both the directions is encrypted. In this case, The firewall is unable to perform its filtering function or other security functions such as access control, logging, or scanning for viruses. IP security could be implemented in the boundary router outside the firewall. However, this device is likely to be less secure than the firewall and thus less desirable as an IP security platform. The last firewall it is called as a distributed firewalls. The distributed firewall that is shown in figure. This distributed firewall configuration involves stand-alone firewall devices plus host-based firewalls working together under a central administrative control. The figure suggests a distributed firewall configuration. Administrators can configure host resident firewalls on hundreds of servers and workstations as well as configure personal firewalls on local and remote user systems. Tools let the network administrator set policies and monitor security across the entire network. These firewalls protect against internal attacks and provide protection tailored to specific machines and also applications. Standalone firewall will provide global protection including internal firewalls and external firewall. These are discussed in the previous section. With distributed firewalls, it makes sense to establish both an internal and an external DMZ. Web servers that need less protection because they have less critical information on them could be placed in an external DMZ. Outside the external firewall, what protection is needed? It is provided by host-based firewalls on these servers. An important aspect of a distributed firewall configuration is security monitoring. Such monitoring typically includes log aggregation and analysis, firewall statistics, and fine-grained remote monitoring of individual hosts if needed. These are the figure for the firewall configurations. These are all the figure for firewall configurations. Next, we'll discuss a summary of firewall locations and also topologies. So what you have discussed so far, that all define a spectrum of all firewall locations and also topologies. So the following alternatives can be identified. First one, it is called as a host resident firewall. This category includes personal firewall software and firewall software on servers Such firewalls can be used alone or as part of an in-depth firewall deployment. Screening router. A single router between the internal and external networks with stateless or full packet filtering. This arrangement is typical for small office or home office, that is SOHO applications. Single bastion inline. A single firewall device between an internal and external router. Here the firewall may implement stateful filters and our application proxies. This is the typical firewall appliance configuration for small to medium sized organizations. Single bastion T. This is very similar to single bastion line, but as a third network interface on bastion to a DMZ, where externally visible servers are placed. Again, this is a common application configuration for medium to large organizations. Next one is called double bastion inline. Here the DMZ is sandwiched between bastion firewalls. This configuration is common for large business and government organizations. Double bastion T. The DMZ is on a separate network interface on the bastion firewall. This configuration is also common for large businesses and government organizations and may be required. For example, this configuration is required for Australian government, that is Australian Government Information Technology Security. The last one, it is called as distributed firewall configuration. And usually this configuration will be used by some large businesses and also in government organizations. Thank you. They can ask the questions like this. List 3 design goals for a firewall. List out 4 techniques used by firewalls to control access and enforce a security policy. Or they can ask like this: what information is used by a typical packet filtering firewall? What are some weaknesses of a packet filtering firewall? What is the difference between packet filtering firewall and a statistical inspection firewall? What is an application level gateway? What is a circuit level gateway? What are the differences among the firewalls? What are the common characteristics of a bastion host? Why is it useful to have a host-based firewalls? What is a DMZ network and what types of systems would you expect to find on such networks? What is the difference between an internal and external firewall?